fight against the night. Brother, sister, time is short now. So in love, live by faith. For the things of earth are passing. This could be a day. This could be the day that the Lord returns in glory. This could be the day that He calls His children home. So be faithful in service as you watch and pray. For this could be the day. This could be the day we must give our lives. For in the blink of an eye, He will come for His bride. This could be the day that the Lord returns in glory. This could be the day when He calls His children home. So be faithful in service as you watch and pray. This could be the day. This could be
Dokeni pamoja na
Mark chapter 14.
Kitabu cha Marko sura ya 14,
And there is a conversation
na kuna mazungumzo
that I mentioned last time we were here on Friday.
ambayo nilitaja tu wakati uliopita tulipokuwa hapa siku ya
And
Ijumaa.
I said
Na nilisema
that the present generation of church,
ya kwamba kizazi cha sasa hivi cha kanisa
they have not well understood, well perceived the true meaning of being born again, being a Christian, Christ follower.
hawajaelewa vyema, hawajafahamu vyema maana ya kweli ya kuokoka, ya kuwa mfuasi wa Kristo.
As you will see again from the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 4 when we get there.
Kama vile mtakavyoona tena kwenye kitabu cha Wakorintho wa kwanza sura ya 4 tutakapofika pale.
Said they have been put at the end of the procession.
Anasema ya kwamba wamewekwa mwisho wa msafara.
They are wearing rags.
Wamevalia matambara.
They have been tied. They are being like people being brought to be butchered.
Wamefungwa kama watu ambao wanaletwa ili kwamba kuchinjwa.
When you look at the life of a true disciple, a true Christian in this life, that there must be a lot of hostility to emulate that.
Ukiangalia maisha ya Mkristo wa kweli, muumini wa kweli katika maisha haya, ni lazima kuwepo na uadui mwingi ili kwamba kudhihirisha hiyo.
And I said,
Na nilisema,
it is not just you that have not understood when Jesus talked about his disciples.
ya kwamba sio ninyi tu ambao hamjaelewa wakati Yesu alipozungumza kuhusu wanafunzi wake.
But do you remember the disciples James and John,
Lakini je, mwakumbuka wanafunzi wake Yesu, Yakobo na
the
Yohana,
sons of Zebedee,
wana wa Zebedayo?
when they asked Jesus that when he comes to his throne, can he put one of them on his right and another one on his left?
Wakati walipomwomba Yesu ya kwamba watakapokuja katika enzi yake wakapate kuweka mmoja katika upande wake wa kushoto na mwingine
They
upande
were
wake wa
walking
kulia,
with Jesus
walikuwa wanatembea na Yesu
very close
kwa karibu sana
when Jesus ministered on the earth.
wakati Yesu alipohudumu duniani.
And look at what they were aspiring for.
Na tazameni kile ambacho walikuwa wanaazimia
They
kupata.
misunderstood.
Walikosa kuelewa.
They were looking for the lofty place.
Walikuwa wanatafuta sehemu za juu juu.
The same mistake the present day church has done,
Makosa yayo hayo ambayo kanisa la sasa hivi wamefanya,
whereby the pastors now take their vacation to Australia at the beaches of Australia with his wife. They are semi-nude there, nude there. His phone is switched off 1 month.
Mahali ambapo sasa wachungaji wa leo hii wanachukua likizo yao kuelekea katika ufuo wa bahari kule Australia, wako pamoja na mke wake huko, wote wako uchi kabisa. Kwa mwezi mmoja wamefunga simu.
That is taking vacation.
Ya kwamba eti ameenda kwenye likizo.
Was there anything about taking vacation in that definition of the true disciples of Christ?
Je, kulikuwepo na kitu kama vile eti kuchukua likizo katika kitambulisho hicho cha wafuasi wa kweli wa Kristo?
Not at all.
La hasha.
And he's saying,
Na anasema
today they are pursuing stock markets.
leo hii wanaendeleza soko za hisa.
And they are running businesses.
Na wanaendeleza biashara.
Transportation businesses.
Biashara za usafiri.
Industries. They're investing in stock markets.
Wanawekeza katika masoko za hisa.
In that definition we saw in 1 Corinthians chapter 4.
Katika kitambulisho hicho ambacho tuliona kwenye Wakorintho wa kwanza sura ya 4.
Is there anything about investing in stock markets?
Je, kuna chochote ambacho kinahusu kuwekeza katika soko za hisa?
That's why I said,
Ndio sababu nilisema
the same John,
ya kwamba kitabu kile kile cha Yohana,
the apostle John,
mtume Yohana,
that eventually was taken captive and exiled in that island of Patmos.
ya kwamba hatimaye alitekwa mateka na kisha kupelekwa katika hicho kisiwa cha Patmo.
The one that wrote the book of Revelation.
Yule ambaye aliandika kitabu cha Ufunuo.
You cannot believe that was him now saying, Lord, I want a lofty place. Put me next to you.
Huwezi kuamini ya kwamba huyo ndiye ambaye alikuwa anasema ya kwamba Bwana, ninataka mahali pa juu kabisa niuweke karibu na wewe.
So when he asked them,
Kwa hivyo alipowauliza,
when you are asking
wakati ambapo ulikuwa
that you
unauliza,
want Jesus to raise you, when you are asking
wakati ambapo mnauliza
to put you in a lofty place,
ili kwamba Yesu akuweka katika mahali pa
do
juu,
you know what it means to be there?
je, mwajua inamaanisha nini kuwa
The
pale?
book of Mark chapter 14.
Kitabu cha Marko sura ya 14.
Let us read from verses 32.
Wacha tusome kuanzia mstari wa 32.
And then we'll read also from other scriptures.
Kisha tutasoma pia kutoka katika maandiko mengine.
He says,
Anasema,
verse 32, Mark 14, they went to a place called Gethsemane. Now I want to give you the true identity and the true image of Christ. And then from there we are going to derive the image that the church ought to be.
sasa ninataka kuwapatia kitambulisho cha kweli, umbo la kweli la Kristo. Alafu sasa toka pale tutaweza kupata ile umbo na kitambulisho ambacho kanisa la paswa kuwa limevalia.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
It says, they went to a place called Gethsemane.
Anasema ya kwamba wakaenda mahali paitwapo Getsemane.
And Jesus said to his disciples,
Yesu akawaambia wanafunzi wake,
sit here while I pray.
kaeni hapa wakati nakwenda kuomba.
He took Peter, James, John
Kisha akawachukua pamoja naye Petro, Yakobo na Yohana
along with him.
pamoja naye.
And he began to be deeply distressed and troubled.
Naye akaanza kuhuzunika sana na kutaabika.
My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death.
Moyo wangu umejawa na huzuni kiasi cha kufa.
He said to them,
Akawaambia,
stay here and keep watch.
kaeni hapa na mkeshe.
Going a little further,
Akaenda mbele kidogo,
he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible, the hour might pass from him.
akajitupa chini kifudifudi, akaomba akisema, kama ikiwezekana saa hiyo ya mateso imwepuke.
The broadcast team keep watching the flashing on the screen. And he's saying, if possible, that the hour might be passed from him.
Na anasema kwamba kama inawezekana ile saa ya mateso ipate kumwepuka.
He was so distressed and troubled.
Alikuwa amefadhaika kabisa na kusumbuka.
And he said his soul was overwhelmed
Na akasema ya kwamba nafsi yake ilikuwa imehuzunika sana
with sorrow
na huzuni
to the point of death. Can you imagine?
kwa kiasi cha kufa. Mwaweza kuwazia.
He said to them,
Akawaambia,
stay here and keep watch.
kaeni hapa mkakeshe.
Going a little further, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible, the hour might pass from him.
Kisha akaenda mbele kidogo, akaanza kuanguka, akajitupa chini kifudifudi, akaomba akisema, kama ikiwezekana saa hiyo ya mateso imwepuke.
Abba, Father,
Aba, Baba,
he said,
akasema,
everything is possible for you.
mambo yote yanawezekana kwako.
Take this cup from me,
Niondolee kikombe hiki,
yet not what I will, but what you will.
lakini si kama nitakavyo mimi, bali kwa mapenzi yako.
This is amazing
Hii yashangaza,
because I am privy of the conversation on the mountain of transfiguration.
kwa sababu najua vyema kabisa kuhusu mazungumzo ya mlima
I have a
wa
lot
Meusi.
of details, as you can imagine.
Ninayo maelezo mengi kabisa kama vile mwaweza kuwazia.
And now for him
Na sasa kwake yeye
to be asking that the hour be passed away from him.
kuuliza ya kwamba ile saa ya mateso ipate kumwepuka.
It's amazing.
Yashangaza.
Because there was a conversation on the hill,
Kwa sababu kulikuwepo na
on the
mazungumzo.
mountain of transfiguration.
Kulikuwepo na mazungumzo katika mlima wa mageuzi.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And it was almost settled
Na ilikuwa karibu imetulizwa, imeweza kukamilishwa.
based on the message from the Father.
Kuzingatia ujumbe toka kwa Baba.
And then when the distress now beholds,
Halafu sasa wakati ile fadhaa dhiki na
Look
kuingia.
now.
Tazameni sasa.
Abba Father,
Abba Baba.
he said,
Akasema.
everything is possible for you.
Mambo yote yanawezekana kwako.
Take this cup from me,
Niondolee kikombe hiki kwangu.
yet not what I will,
Lakini si kama vile nitakavyo mimi.
but what you will.
Bali mapenzi yako yatimizwe.
And so when James and John
Na kwa hivyo wakati Yakobo na Yohana
had asked him to place them one next to him on the right side and another on the left,
walipomuuliza ili kwamba wapate kuweka mmoja wao katika upande wa kushoto na mwingine upande wa kuume.
it's amazing.
Yashangaza.
Because at that time he asked them, are you able to drink from the cup that I drink from?
Kwa sababu kwa wakati huo aliwauliza, je, mnaweza kunywa kikombe ambacho mimi nakunywa ndani mwake?
Are you able to drink from the cup that I'm about to drink from?
Je, mko tayari, mnaweza kunywa toka katika kikombe ambacho niko karibu kunywa kwacho?
The cup that he carried when he met Melchizedek.
Kikombe ambacho alibeba alipokutana na Melkizedeki.
The bread and the cup.
Mkate na divai.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
He asked them, are you able?
Aliwauliza, je, mnaweza?
So now here you are,
Hivyo
the
basi
cup.
Hivyo basi sasa hapa ulipo kikombe.
You want the lofty place.
Unataka mahali pa juu.
Are you able to travail this?
Je, unaweza kusumbuka na haya?
And he says the following.
Na akasema yafuatayo.
Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping.
Kisha akarudi kwa wanafunzi wake akawakuta wamelala.
Simon, he said to Peter.
Simoni akamwambia Petro.
Simon, he said to Peter.
Simoni akamwambia Petro.
Are you asleep?
Umelala?
Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour?
Je, hukuweza kukesha hata kwa saa moja?
Watch and pray that you will not fall into temptation.
Kesheni na kuomba msije mkaingia majaribuni.
The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Roho iko radhi lakini mwili ni dhaifu.
Once more he went away and prayed the same thing.
Akaenda tena kuomba akisema maneno yale yale.
When he came back, he found them sleeping.
Aliporudi kwa wanafunzi wake akawakuta tena wamelala.
Because their eyes were heavy.
Kwa sababu macho yao yalikuwa mazito.
They did not know what to say to him.
Na hawakujua la kumwambia.
And returning at that time, he said to them,
Akaja mara ya tatu akawaambia,
are you still sleeping
bado mmelala
and resting?
na kupumzika?
Enough.
Imetosha.
The hour has come.
Saa imewadia.
Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners.
Tazama mwana wa Adamu amesalitiwa mikononi mwa wenye dhambi.
Let us rise and go.
Amkeni twendeni zetu.
Here comes my betrayer.
Tazameni msaliti wangu yuaja.
So this is very powerful.
Kwa hivyo hii ni ya nguvu kabisa.
The travail
Yale masumbuko
that the Messiah went through on the earth.
ambayo Masia alipitia duniani.
And he's saying
Na anasema
that you as Christians,
ya kwamba ninyi kama
you
Wakristo
cannot drink from this cup. It's too heavy.
kamwe hamwezi kunywa toka kwenye kikombe hiki, ni
Only the
kizito.
Messiah can drink from this
Ni
cup.
Masia tu peke yake ambaye anaweza kunywa toka kwenye
But
kikombe
this
hiki.
cup
Lakini hiki
and the
kikombe
travailing at the garden,
na masumbuko
they
katika
are an
bustani
emulation
ni dhihirisho
of the travail that you ought to go through in this life.
ya mateso ambayo mwapaswa kupitia katika maisha haya.
The book of Mark chapter 10.
Kitabu cha Marko sura ya 10.
Mark chapter 10, blessed people.
Marko sura ya 10, watu wabarikiwa.
Turn with me there.
Geukeni pamoja nami pale.
Mark chapter 10.
Kitabu cha Marko sura ya 10.
We can start reading.
Tunaweza kuanza kusoma.
And then he says the following from verse 32 to 42.
Kisha asema yafuatayo.
We can take 35 to 41.
Tunaweza kuchukua 35 hadi 41.
Even 33 is all right.
Hata 35 ni sawa.
We are going up to Jerusalem, he said.
Tunapanda kwenda Yerusalemu akasema.
And the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests
Na mwana wa Adamu atasalitiwa kwa viongozi wa makuhani.
and the teachers of the law.
Na walimu wa sheria.
They will condemn him to death
Nao watamhukumu kifo.
and hand him over
Na kumtia
to the Gentiles,
mikononi mwa watu mataifa.
who will mock him
Ambao watamdhihaki.
and spit on him
Na watamtemea mate.
and flog him
Watampiga.
and kill him.
Na kumuua.
3 days later he will rise.
Siku 3 baadaye kifo chake atafufuka.
So look at what the Messiah goes through.
Hivyo basi tazameni kile ambacho Masia anapitia.
Unbelievable.
Ya kutoamini. kuaminika,
what the Messiah is going through by bearing that cup,
kile ambacho Masia anapitia kwa kubeba hicho kikombe,
the cup of the wrath of God,
kikombe cha ghadhabu ya Mungu
that he drank
ambaye alikunywa
on your behalf.
kwa niaba yenu.
And he's saying
Na anasema
that if you compare these doings, these goings on here,
ya kwamba ukilinganisha haya matendo hapa,
to be mocked,
kudhihakiwa,
spat on,
kutemewa mate,
flogged,
kupigwa
and killed.
na kuuawa.
Do you remember when he told John and James
Je, mwakumbuka wakati alipomwambia Yakobo na Yohana
that if you want to drink that cup, yes indeed you'll drink from that cup.
ya kwamba iwapo mnataka kunywa toka kwenye kikombe hicho, ndio kwa kweli mtakunywa toka kwenye kikombe hicho.
And you find that somebody like James, they took a sword and they just stabbed him into the stomach.
Na unapata ya kwamba mtu
And he died there.
na unapata ya kwamba mtu kama Yakobo walichukua upanga wakamdunga kabisa kwenye tumbo akafa pale pale.
And so the Lord is saying there is persecution.
Na kwa hivyo Bwana anasema ya kwamba kunayo
If you look
mateso.
at being mocked,
Ukiangalia kudhihakiwa,
they spat on him,
wakamtemea mate,
flog him, and
wakampiga
kill him.
na kumuua.
And then you read 1 Corinthians chapter 4,
Halafu usome kwenye kitabu cha Wakorintho wa kwanza sura ya 4
verses 8 and 12.
mstari wa 8 hadi 12.
What the disciples go through on this earth, in this life.
Kile ambacho wanafunzi wanapitia katika maisha haya kwenye
What
dunia
the
hii.
true Christians go through in this life.
Kile ambacho Wakristo wa kweli hupitia katika maisha
Then you
haya.
begin to understand who the disciples of Christ are.
Basi unaanza kuelewa wanafunzi wa kweli wa Kristo ni kina nani.
The book of Psalm 75.
Kitabu cha Zaburi 75.
Turn with me there, blessed people.
Geukeni pamoja nami pale watu wabarikiwa.
Again, the book of Psalms,
Tena kitabu cha Zaburi
real quick now, 75.
kwa haraka 75.
Hallelujah.
Haleluya.
In our introduction tonight,
Katika utangulizi wetu siku wa leo,
the book of Psalm 75
kitabu cha Zaburi 75
says the following.
anasema yafuatayo.
It says verses 7 and 8.
Anasema kwenye mstari wa 7 na 8.
Once we get there, we read together.
Mkifika tu pale tutasoma pamoja.
It says, it is good. Sorry. It is God who judges.
Anasema bali ni Mungu ndiye ahukumuye,
He brings one down and exalts another.
humshusha huyu na kumkweza mwingine.
In the hand of the Lord is a cup,
Mkononi mwa Bwana kuna kikombe
full of foaming wine mixed with spices.
kilichojaa mvinyo unaotoka povu uliochanganywa na vikolezo.
And he's describing the cup of the wrath of God.
Na anazungumza kuhusu kikombe cha ghadhabu ya Mungu.
Let me share with you this vision of the Lord.
Wacha nishiriki pamoja nanyi haya maono ya Bwana.
The year was 2005.
Mwaka ulikuwa 2005.
And I was holding a conference in Dodoma, Tanzania.
Na nilikuwa ninafanya kongamano kule Dodoma,
A
Tanzania.
conference of pastors in Dodoma, Tanzania.
Kongamano la wachungaji kule Dodoma, Tanzania.
And while I was there,
Na mara nilipokuwa huko,
that night,
usiku huo,
I saw the visions of God.
niliona maono ya Mungu.
And this is what the Lord showed me.
Na hiki ndicho Bwana alinionyesha.
I saw God the Holy Spirit.
Nilimwona Mungu Roho Mtakatifu.
Heaven opened,
Mbingu ilifunguka.
the super glorious like a dove.
Wa utukufu sana zaidi kama njiwa.
And he was descending from heaven. When heaven opened, he was descending with his wings doing descending like that from heaven.
Na wakati mbingu ilipofunguka, alikuwa anashuka toka mbinguni akipiga mabawa yake namna hiyo toka mbinguni.
I saw God the Holy Spirit.
Nilimwona Mungu Roho
When
Mtakatifu.
heaven opened,
Wakati mbingu ilipofunguka,
I saw God the Holy Spirit.
nilimwona Mungu Roho Mtakatifu.
The super glorious, like a super glorious white dove.
Wa utukufu sana zaidi kama njiwa wa utukufu sana zaidi mweupe.
And he was descending from heaven
Na alikuwa anapaa toka
and
mbinguni.
flapping his wings vertically like this.
Alikuwa anashuka toka mbinguni na akipiga mabawa yao toka juu mbinguni namna hii.
He was coming down like that.
Alikuwa anashuka chini namna hiyo.
And then when I looked at his legs,
Halafu wakati nilipotazama miguu zake,
he was holding a super white glorious cup.
alikuwa ameshika kikombe cha utukufu sana cheupe cha utukufu.
He was holding a super glorious white cup with his legs.
Alikuwa ameshika kikombe cha utukufu cheupe sana na miguu
Let me give
zake.
you the details today.
Wacha niwapatie vipenge hivyo vyake leo hii.
The cup had a handle, which is the super glorious white cup with a handle.
Kikombe hicho cha utukufu kabisa cheupe na mkono.
Then he was descending and holding that cup, but the wings were
alikuwa anashuka akiwa amebeba hicho kikombe kwa miguu zake, lakini mabao yake yalikuwa napiga namna hiyo.
2005.
Mwaka
From
2005.
Dodoma, Tanzania.
Toka Dodoma, Tanzania.
I was doing meetings across Tanzania,
Nilikuwa ninafanya mikutano kule Tanzania,
announcing the coming of the Messiah.
nikitangaza kuja kwa
From
Masia.
Dar es Salaam, we did a meeting at the Diamond Hall in Dar es Salaam.
Toka pale Dar es Salaam tulifanya mkutano pale katika ukumbi wa Diamond.
A meeting in Arusha.
Mkutano kule
A meeting
Arusha.
in Mbeya.
Mkutano kule
A meeting
Mbeya.
in Moshi.
Mkutano kule
And many
Moshi.
other towns.
Na katika miji
I was
mingine
going all
mingi.
over Tanzania.
Nilikuwa naenda kote kote Tanzania.
And at that time, even the government was involved. So the provincial commissioners were organizing and they were seated in the meetings.
Na kwa wakati huo hata serikali ilikuwa inahusika, na kwa hivyo wale makamishna wa mikoa walikuwa nahusika na kupangilia hizo mikutano.
So when I got to Dodoma,
Hivyo nilipofika Dodoma,
this is what the Lord showed me in the dream at night.
hii ndio ambayo Bwana alinionyesha katika ndoto usiku.
Remember, we went up to the border with Zambia, Mbeya.
Kumbukeni ya kwamba hata tulienda katika ule mpaka wa Zambia, Mbeya.
But at Dodoma, and then the Lord shows me God the Holy Spirit, super white dove, carrying a super white glorious cup, descending from heaven that opened, coming down like that, flapping his wings, coming down.
Lakini toka Dodoma Bwana alinionyesha
Pale Dodoma, tafadhali.
lakini pale Dodoma
Okay.
Lakini pale Dodoma Bwana alinionyesha njiwa mwenye utukufu mweupe kabisa kabisa, akishuka toka juu mbinguni akiwa anapiga mabawa yake namna hiyo na
Carrying a super white glorious cup.
akiwa amebeba kikombe cheupe cha utukufu sana zaidi.
Then when he reached somewhere up, about probably less than 1 kilometer from the earth, the soil,
Halafu wakati alipofika mahali yapata karibu kilomita 1 toka kwenye ardhi,
less than a kilometer,
chini ya kilomita 1 toka kwa ardhi,
then he took that cup and he poured like this.
kisha akachukua hicho kikombe akamwaga namna hii.
He poured the wrath of God upon the earth.
Alimwaga ghadhabu ya Mungu juu ya dunia.
That's why you see I began to go all over the earth saying the judgment of God is coming.
Na ndio sababu mnaona kwamba nilianza kwenda kote kote duniani nikisemea kwamba hukumu ya Mungu inakuja.
Repent.
Tubuni.
The judgment of God is coming.
Hukumu ya Mungu inakuja.
So unless you are in this level of calling,
Hivyo basi isipokuwa tu uwe katika kiwango hiki cha mwito,
many people take God the Holy Spirit as being very gentle, very kind, he's harmless.
watu wengi kabisa humchukulia Mungu Roho Mtakatifu kuwa mpole kabisa, ambaye hawezi kuumiza, hana mambo mengi.
But now what I see,
Lakini sasa kile ambacho ninaona,
he is the one executing the judgment of God.
yeye ndiye ambaye anatekeleza hukumu ya
He is
Mungu.
the one navigating the two prophets to pronounce judgment.
Yeye ndiye ambaye anaendeleza manabii wawili wa Mungu kutangaza hukumu,
The mystery of God.
maajabu ya Mungu.
Then I began to announce the judgment of God coming to the earth.
Kisha nikaanza kutangaza hukumu ya Mungu ikija duniani.
And then
Halafu
I realized, now you can see the coronavirus, the earthquakes,
sasa mnaweza kuona virusi vya korona, matetemeko ya ardhi,
the locusts.
nzige.
You can see what's happening globally now.
Mnaweza kuona kile ambacho kinatendeka kote kote duniani sasa.
So in the book of Psalm
Na kwa hivyo kwenye kitabu cha Zaburi
75 he says,
75 anasema,
it is God who judges.
bali ni Mungu ndiye ahukumuye.
Verse 7. He brings one down and exalts another.
Humshusha huyu na kumkweza mwingine.
Mstari wa 7.
Mstari wa 7,
In the hand of the Lord is a cup,
mkononi mwa Bwana kuna kikombe
full of foaming wine mixed with spices.
kilichojaa mvinyo uliotoka povu uliochanganywa na vikolezi.
He's talking about the cup of the wrath of God that the Messiah bore.
Anazungumza kuhusu kikombe cha ghadhabu ya Mungu ambaye Masihi alibeba.
And I'm going to share with you, just after reading them, then I'll explain something to you.
Na ninaenda kushiriki pamoja nanyi baada ya kuisoma tu, halafu nitawaelezea jambo.
For you who are the true disciples of Christ,
Kwani ninyi ambao ni wanafunzi wa kweli wa
who are the
Kristo,
true Christians,
ambao ni Wakristo wa kweli,
you are not to drink of this cup.
ninyi hampaswi kunywa kikombe hiki,
Because Jesus already drank of this cup on your behalf.
kwa sababu tayari Yesu alikunywa kikombe hiki kwa niaba yenu.
I'm going to bring a warning to the church today
Ninaenda kuleta onyo kwa kanisa leo
that
hii,
if you continue in sin and apostasy, you will have to drink of this cup like the sinners, like the rebellious.
ya kwamba iwapo mtaendelea katika dhambi na mwanguko wa imani, basi itawabidi munywe kutoka katika kikombe hiki kama wenye dhambi, kama wale waasi.
The book of Isaiah chapter 51 verse 17.
Kitabu cha Isaya sura 51 mstari wa 17
It says the following.
anasema yafuatayo:
Awake, awake,
amka, amka,
rise up, Jerusalem.
Inuka Yerusalemu.
You who have drunk from the hand of the Lord
Wewe uliyekunywa kutoka katika mkono wa
the
Bwana
cup of his wrath.
kikombe cha ghadhabu yake.
You who have drained it to its dregs.
Wewe uliyekunywa mpaka kufikia machujo yake.
The goblet that makes people stagger.
Kikombe kile cha kunywea kinachowafanya watu kuyumbayumba.
When the wrath was coming to Jerusalem.
Wakati ghadhabu ilikuwa inakuja kwa
And
Yerusalemu.
because Jerusalem refused to listen to Yahweh, their Savior.
Na kwa sababu Yerusalemu walikataa kumsikiliza Yahweh mwokozi wao.
Now the Lord pronounced on them that they should now drink from the cup of the wrath of God.
Hapo sasa Bwana akawatangazia ya kwamba ni lazima wapate kunywa kutoka kwa kikombe cha ghadhabu ya
And
Mungu.
that's why it's very important to understand who are the true disciples of Christ
Na ndio
at
sababu
this time.
na ndio sababu ni muhimu kabisa kuelewa, je, wanafunzi wa kweli wa Kristo ni kina nani kwa wakati huu?
Because if you get it wrong, you would have to drink from the cup of the wrath of God.
Kwa sababu iwapo hutaipata vyema itakubidi unywe kutoka kwa kikombe cha ghadhabu ya Mungu.
Jeremiah 49,
Kitabu cha Yeremia 49
verse 12.
mstari wa 12.
It says the following.
Anasema yafuatayo.
The book of Jeremiah chapter 49.
Kitabu cha Yeremia sura ya 49.
Turn with me there, we'll read together.
Geukeni pamoja nami pale ili tusome pamoja.
Verse 12.
Mstari wa 12.
And it says the following.
Na anasema yafuatayo.
Jeremiah 49:12.
Kitabu cha Yeremia 49 mstari wa 12.
This is what the Lord of hosts says.
Hili ndilo asemalo Bwana wa
This is what
majeshi.
the Yahweh of hosts says.
Hili ndilo asemalo Yahweh wa majeshi.
If those who do not deserve to drink the cup must drink it,
Kama wale wasiostahili kukinywa kikombe ni lazima wakinywe,
why should you go unpunished?
kwa nini wewe usiadhibiwe?
You will not go unpunished,
Hutakwepa kuadhibiwa,
but must drink it.
ni lazima ukinywe.
So do you understand now?
Hivyo basi, je, mwelewa
So
sasa?
when Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane
Kwa hivyo wakati Yesu alipoenda kwenye bustani la
and
Getsemane
took the cup,
na kuchukua kikombe,
the bitter cup,
kile kikombe kichungu,
and that cup is without tranquilizer.
na hicho kikombe hakina vikolezi vyovyote.
That's why you see that when he was on the cross,
Na ndio sababu muone ya kwamba wakati alipokuwa msalabani,
they tried to give him a drink that would be like anesthetic, that would be a stupefying drink to make him not feel the pain, to tranquilize the pain.
walijaribu kumpatia kinywaji ambacho ni kana kwamba kinywaji ambacho kitajaribu kupunguza yale mauchungu ili kwamba sija akahisi uchungu.
He refused.
Alikataa.
He wanted to feel the pain as it is raw,
Alitaka kuihisi uchungu kama ilivyo mbichi,
because he was doing it for you, his true disciples.
kwa sababu alikuwa anawafanya ninyi wanafunzi wake wa kweli.
And then
Halafu sasa,
now that the Lord has died and resurrected
sasa kwamba Bwana amekufa na kufufuka
and is enthroned in the kingdom of glory,
na yeye amekwezwa katika ufalme wa utukufu,
the true disciples,
wanafunzi wa kweli,
how ought you to live
je, ni vipi mnavyopaswa kuishi
that you may never again have anything to do with drinking from that cup?
ili kamwe katu msiwahi kushughulika na kunywa katika kikombe hicho?
You will not go unpunished.
Wewe hutaenda bila
You
kuadhibiwa,
must drink it.
ni lazima ukinywe.
Why should you go unpunished?
Ni kwa nini uende bila kuadhibiwa?
It says, if those who do not deserve to drink the cup must drink of it,
Anasema kwamba kama wale wanaostahili kukinywa kikombe hicho ni lazima wakinywe.
why should you go unpunished?
Kwa nini wewe usiadhibiwe?
Tremendous.
Ya ajabu.
So, in defining his disciples,
Kwa hivyo katika kutambulisha wanafunzi wake,
he exonerated them from drinking from the cup of the wrath of God that I saw.
aliwahimiza tokana dhidi ya kukunywa toka katika kikombe cha ghadhabu ya Mungu ambaye niliona.
And that takes us straight to the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 4 now.
Na hiyo inatupeleka moja kwa moja kwenye kitabu cha Wakorintho wa kwanza sura ya 4 sasa.
After that very brief introduction about the cup of the wrath,
Baada ya utangulizi huo mfupi kuhusiana na kikombe cha ghadhabu,
let us see what that translates now into what life you ought to live that you may never be called upon to drink from the cup of the dreadful wrath of Yahweh.
wacha sasa tuone hiyo inazungumzia nini kwa maisha ambayo ninyi mwapaswa kuishi ili kwamba msije mkajaribu kunywa kutoka kwa ghadhabu ya kikombe cha ghadhabu ya Yahweh.
Hallelujah.
Haleluya.
So he says the following.
Kwa hivyo anasema yafuatayo.
1 Corinthians chapter 4 verses 8 to 12.
Kitabu cha Wakorintho wa kwanza sura ya 4 mstari wa 8 hadi 12.
Now I am going to define to you
Sasa
the true Christians, the true disciples of Christ, based on what we have imported from the travail in Gethsemane.
Sasa ninaenda kuwaelezea, ninaenda kuwatambulishia kile ninachomaanisha kwa wanafunzi wa kweli wa Kristo, wafuasi wa kweli wa Kristo, kutokana na kile ambacho tumepata kutoka kwa yale mateso ya Getsemane.
And then on the cross,
Halafu kwenye msalaba,
when he finally drank from the cup of the wrath of Yahweh,
wakati hatimaye alipokunywa toka kwenye kikombe cha ghadhabu ya
how
Yahweh,
should that translate to the Christian believer, that they may never be called upon at any one time again to drink from that cup that Jesus drank on their behalf? How ought you then to live?
Je, ni vipi ambavyo hiyo sasa inaelezea katika maisha ya Kristo muumini, ili kwamba kamwe katu wasije wakakunywa kutoka katika kikombe cha ghadhabu ya Mungu? Je, ni vipi ambavyo wanapaswa kuishi?
How ought you then to live?
Je, ni vipi unavyopaswa kuishi basi?
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Jesus is Lord.
Yesu ni Bwana.
And so he's saying,
Na kwa hivyo anasema,
1 Corinthians chapter 4, 1 Corinthians 4, I'm reading 8 and 12.
kitabu cha Wakorintho wa kwanza sura ya 4 nasoma mstari wa 8 hadi 12.
Already you have all you want.
Sasa tayari mna yote mnayotaka.
Already you have become rich.
Tayari mmekwisha kuwa matajiri.
You have begun to reign,
Mmeanza kuwa wafalme.
and that without us.
Tena bila sisi.
How I wish that we also might reign with you.
Laiti gani sisi pia tupate kutawala pamoja nanyi.
In other words,
Kwa maneno mengine,
how I wish that you were right,
laiti gani mngekuwa sawa,
that we too may reign with you.
ili kwamba sisi pia tupate kutawala nanyi.
For it seems to me
Kwa maana yanionekania
that God has put us apostles to display
ya kwamba Mungu ametuweka sisi mitume katika nafasi ya mwisho kabisa,
at the end of the procession,
katika mwisho wa msafara,
like those condemned to die in the arena.
kama watu waliohukumiwa kufa uwanjani.
We have been made a spectacle to the whole universe,
Kwa sababu tumefanywa kuwa maonyesho kwa ulimwengu wote
to
mzima,
angels as well as human beings.
kwa malaika na kwa wanadamu pia.
We are fools for Christ,
Kwa ajili ya Kristo sisi ni wajinga,
but you are wise in Christ.
lakini ninyi mna hekima ndani ya Kristo.
We are weak,
Sisi ni dhaifu,
but you are strong.
lakini ninyi mna nguvu.
You are honored.
Ninyi
We
mnaheshimiwa,
are dishonored.
tunadharauliwa.
To this very hour, we go hungry and thirsty.
Mpaka saa hii tuna njaa na kiu,
We are in rags.
tu uchi,
We are brutally treated.
tunapigwa vibaya
We are homeless.
na hatuna makao.
We work hard with our own hands.
Tunafanya kazi kwa bidii kwa mikono yetu wenyewe.
When we are cursed,
Tunapolaaniwa,
instead we bless.
badala yake tunabariki.
When we are persecuted,
Tunapoteswa,
instead we endure it.
badala yake tunastahimili.
When we are slandered,
Tunaposingiziwa,
instead we answer kindly.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. I see the Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital. I see the lack of equipment now. There is no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
This is an ABC News.
But perhaps there is no nation on earth with a bigger crisis than India. They are on track to overtake the U.S. as the nation with the most cases worldwide.
More than 100,000 deaths.
This situation is unlike anything which we have seen ever before.
Bodies lying in wards packed with patients. Wards used as morgue to store bodies.
A shocker from Mumbai. A video posted on Twitter by BJP MLA Nitesh Rane shows coronavirus patients in a hospital ward lying next to corpses wrapped in body bags. Some patients have family members attending to them, apparently ignoring bodies right behind them. In a disturbing video that emerged on Tuesday, 8 bodies of coronavirus victims were wrapped in plastic and dumped into a common pit in Karnataka's Bellary district. Officials, while maintaining that the bodies were wrapped in plastic as per rules, said that the inhumane treatment will be probed. Chief Minister B.S. Yadurappa termed the behavior of the staff inhuman and painful.
There are disturbing visuals that have gone viral on social media. You can see shots on our screens at the moment of a group of men in hazmat suits dumping body bags into a huge pit. What really is going on?
The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
India has become the second worst hit country by the coronavirus pandemic in the world. This is also the highest one-day surge recorded anywhere in the world. 90,800 people have been tested positive for the lethal virus in the last 24 hours.
After lapses at Cooper Hospital and Nair Hospital, now another hospital, a video from a hospital in Sion has gone viral on social media. What it shows is how COVID patients are being treated in the same ward where lying only few inches away from them are dead bodies. Yes, these are dead corpses on the bed, even as nurses are walking up and down past these corpses, the ward checking up on COVID patients.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. I see the Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there.
The capital is being ravaged at a frightening speed. With every pyre that burns, India's self-belief is dying. Each funeral is a story of personal loss and national shame.
And the eyes of the world are on the faraway nation of India, where the virus is said to be swallowing people. Mass cremations are taking place in parking lots because crematoriums are overwhelmed. Some of the images coming out of India are apocalyptic.
The situation in India is beyond heartbreaking.
Across the city, smoke rises up from a makeshift crematorium that's struggling to keep up with the inflow of arriving bodies.
48 साल अवस्था हो गई लाइफ में ऐसा दृश्य भयावह हमने कभी नहीं देखा है सोचा भी नहीं था कि एक साथ 20-22 डेड बॉडी जल रही हैं 15-20 लाइन में हैं जो कि इसके क्या कर रही गई इसमें हाँ आज भी भारत
Through the night, the pyres burn, the flames piercing the dark sky. In this Kanpur crematorium, as COVID takes its deathly toll, a never-ending day and an endless nightmare for relatives.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there.
Tragedy took place when we lost 20 precious lives. The 20s are not, madam, just a statistical number. They are all human beings. They were my patients. They were my responsibility. They came on faith of Dr. Baruja and Golden Hospital.
Crematoriums are running out of space too. Makeshift funeral pyres burn around the clock. The death toll in parts of India, both metropolitan and rural, is staggering. And worse still, the number of lives lost here so far is almost certainly vastly underreported.
This is CNN Breaking News.
At the Simapuri crematorium, the loss weighs heavily in the smoldering air, and the dead are piling up.
There are bodies literally everywhere you turn here. I've honestly never seen anything quite like it. And the organizers say that pre-COVID, they might cremate 7 or 8 people a day. Today alone, they've already cremated 55 bodies, and it's not even lunchtime.
Just months ago, India's leadership boasted that the country had effectively defeated COVID. Now it has set global records for new cases as a terrifying second wave ravages the country. Jitender Singh Shunti says he and his men don't even stop to take breaks. And still, they can barely cope with the flow. A volunteer approaches. They've run out of tables for the bodies, he says, then adds that his mother died from COVID the night before. So India's capital continues to burn, suffocated by the rampant spread of this deadly virus. A city and a country brought to its knees, praying for respite.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there.
Mass cremations begin in India as coronavirus deaths in the capital of New Delhi soar. If this continues, they say they would have no other choice but to cremate bodies on the road.
There probably is no more graphic an illustration of just how bad the coronavirus crisis is hitting India than this. This is a makeshift crematorium. It's actually not meant to exist. This has been set up by the residents around here who cannot cope with the number of dead. Behind me are all the funeral pyres that represent a mother, a father, a daughter, a son, an uncle, a loved one to someone, a friend to someone. Each one of those fires is a coronavirus death. And we have been watching in just the last few minutes alone, they've been coming in virtually every second. They simply can't cope. And this is not one of the official funeral sites. This is an ad hoc one. Yeah.
कोई गरीब आदमी हो तो कैसे सरवाइव कर पाएगा। आज जो हम लाश अपनी जो ससुर साहब का लाश जो जला रहे हैं, इसके लिए हमको 12,000 रुपया पे करना पड़ा है। और इतना ही नहीं, पैसा तो ले ही लिया, लाश वैसे कुछ लकड़ियां डाल करके जला करके चल दिया। फिर हम उनको ढूंढ रहे हैं कि भाई लाश जली ही नहीं है, 4 घंटा हो गया, कहाँ आए आप? तो बड़ी मुश्किल से फिर उनको पकड़ कर लाए, तो ये 4 लकड़ी उन्होंने लगाई है और अभी तक लाश जल नहीं पाई है और कोई देखने वाला नहीं है।
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into a hospital in India. There's a very big distress there. The doctors are running up and down and many people flooding into the hospital.
At this crematorium in Delhi, the bodies lie in the heat for up to 20 hours. And there are more waiting behind these in parked cars driven by grieving relatives. The funeral pyres are so busy that families crisscross India's capital looking for any available space, some of them renting fridges to stop their loved ones from decay. At another crematorium in the city, there are at least ambulances available to ferry the dead, though they are piled high inside. And then another queue for hours before they can be burned. India's official death toll is nearly 200,000 now, and these fires are constant, perhaps the most damning indictment.
The local health inspector ordered a public park to build 20 additional cremation platforms, but it's still not enough.
These are all the remains of human beings who've been unable to be properly mourned by their families and friends, who've been taken mostly, almost entirely, we're told, victims of the COVID pandemic that is rapidly coming to the stage of representing something that is almost biblical in scale here.
We can just see behind you so many piles burning. Just give us a sense of what you're seeing, and again, a warning to our viewers that you might find some of these images disturbing.
Well, Linda, just in this area alone, it's about the size of 3/4 of a football pitch. There are close to 50 pyres burning. This crematorium believed it would probably process about 150 bodies today. There's estimated about 600 people dying every day here in New Delhi, but the truth of the matter is the numbers must be much higher. In this crematorium, the dead actually have to join a queue before they can be seen, before they can be given their last rites. People accompanying them have to take a ticket, like you would going to see the doctor or getting a bank appointment, wait their turn, and then they will be brought out to one of these locations. Ghee, which is a butter-like oil substance, poured on them, the wood piled on top, and they're given their last rites. Very often, excuse me.
Bodies suspected to be of COVID-19 victims have been found floating in the Ganges in the states of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh.
Nearly 2,000 bodies have been retrieved from India's river Ganges by authorities in 2 states.
Dead bodies were seen buried in Unnav's Buxar Ghat in UP.
Decomposed bodies were seen floating in Ganga River in Bihar's Buxar district. The bloated bodies later piled up on the banks of Ganga in Chausa village. Bodies are directly thrown instead of being cremated. The disposal of dead bodies has once again raised questions over the sensitivity in handling and exposing hundreds to the deadly virus.
Dogs prying on some, and in the middle of it, some cremations continue. Sitaram Chaudhary and his son Sriram were starting their fishing routine on May 10th, but when they saw countless dead bodies covered in shrouds floating, they called off their day.
There are still dead bodies, bloated, decomposed, visible on the banks of this Chausa Ghat.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital I see the lack of equipment now. There is no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
A capital on its knees.
India has set a global record for daily infections and deaths. But health experts believe the real numbers could be much higher. For every 200 patients, only one doctor was available.
So we are struggling.
So many like her are putting in all they can.
India's healthcare system is at a breaking point. Unable to cope with the scale of the crisis, its people left to fend for themselves.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now. He took me to India. The Lord took me into India. There's a very big distress there. You see a lot of people swarming into the hospital. I see the lack of equipment now. There's no equipment. The doctors are running up and down, and many people flooding into the hospital.
This is CNN Breaking News.
India is experiencing the world's worst coronavirus outbreak. Today is the 5th day with more than 3,000 reported deaths in that country, even as help pours into India from the U.S. and other countries. India is struggling to give basic medical care to those who need it. CNN's chief international correspondent, Clarissa Ward, is live for us in New Delhi. She went to India's most populous state, Uttar Pradesh, to see the crisis firsthand. And Clarissa, we should warn our viewers that what you're about to share with us is really upsetting at times. Tell us what you saw.
It really is, Jake. We visited a government-run hospital in Uttar Pradesh. Some 200 million people living in that state. It's one of the hardest hit states, and the scenes we saw were absolutely harrowing. A man wails in anguish, but no one is listening. His cry, just one of many at this hospital in Uttar Pradesh state. Inside the entrance, his son Deepak is fighting for his life. Gasping for air, his body convulsing. There are no doctors attending to him. The handful of medical staff working in this ward are stretched thin to breaking point.
This hospital is completely overwhelmed. The doctors say that they have about 55 beds, and currently they're treating more than 100 patients. And you can see people are literally just lying on the floor, desperately hoping to get some medical attention.
32-year-old Kavita says she's been here for 4 days, begging for oxygen that has not come. I'm getting anxious, she says. No one is listening to me here.
Are you struggling to breathe?
I'm unable to breathe freely, she tells us. No one is taking care of me. In the next room, more than 20 patients are packed in tightly. This is what now passes for the intensive care unit. Family members have taken on the role of primary carers, where medical staff are simply unavailable. Suddenly, there is a commotion. Will Someone please call the doctor, this man shouts. His mother, 55-year-old Rajbala, appears to be slipping away. Her sons work furiously to revive her. A doctor comes in and tells them to stop crowding her, but the family is inconsolable. We've been here for 6 days, and only today we got the ventilator for my mother, he tells us. The oxygen is out. We had to bring an oxygen cylinder. It's a story we hear again and again. One man approaches us pleading. His wife can't get a bed. No one's listening to me. I've tried everything, he says. Please help me or she will die. I'm not a doctor. I'm so sorry. I can't help you.
E quest'uomo sta chiedendo aiuto, altrimenti sua moglie morirà.
Struggling to breathe outside, but they won't let her in. We spot the hospital administrator and ask him what's going on. Says they are desperately short of staff. Those who do work here risk becoming patients themselves. These men tell us they move a dozen bodies a day. We hear screams coming from the ICU. Rajbala has flatlined again. Her son desperately pumps her chest. A doctor comes in. He takes her pulse. But it's too late. This time, there is no point in trying to resuscitate her. The agony of her sons is shared by so many in this country. Failed by a healthcare system on the brink of collapse, and a government accused of mismanaging this crisis. Rajbala's body is left for nearly an hour before it is finally moved.
And you see it there, Jake. I mean, shortages of everything, shortages of beds, shortages of drugs, shortages of oxygen. But perhaps the most pronounced shortage that we saw on the ground was a shortage of medical personnel. 5 doctors and nurses were responsible for looking after all those more than 100 people in that COVID ward. And today, the Indian government has come out and said that they are actually going to draft in final year medical students to try to backfill some of the void and help tackle this crisis. But listen, it's going to be an uphill battle, Jake, and the peak hasn't even hit yet of this vicious second wave.
Questa è la situazione in India. Il Signore ha parlato con me proprio adesso e mi ha portato in India. E il Signore mi ha mostrato che c'è molto. Ho visto la mancanza di strumenti in ospedale e i dottori corrono avanti e indietro e tante persone che corrono in ospedale. E questa è la disperazione negli ospedali in India per l'ultima ondata di coronavirus.
Recently in Delhi, a group of people turned on medics and security guards at a
Questa è
hospital
in Delhi.
after they discovered a 67-year-old relative was denied an ICU bed and instead died in a hospital waiting room.
Si vede questi cittadini che se la prendono con i medici per aver mancato le cure ai loro cari. Tanti sono morti perché non c'è abbastanza ossigeno per tutti i pazienti Covid. E questo medico dice: cosa posso fare se non abbiamo l'ossigeno? E questo uomo parla che suo fratello maggiore è morto perché l'ossigeno, la macchina d'ossigeno si è spenta e quest'uomo è morto davanti a lui. E questi sono pazienti Covid per terra perché non ci sono posti per loro.
India's healthcare system is crumbling under the pressure of a massive COVID-19 outbreak.
Il sistema sanitario in India è in grande difficoltà sotto la pressione di questa nuova ondata. Non c'è più posto per i pazienti che arrivano.
As India struggles with a catastrophic second wave, heartbreaking scenes playing out outside hospitals.
L'India sta lottando con questa catastrofe di questa ondata di Covid.
In the folded hands, desperate cries for help, and the heart-wrenching screams when all is lost. Meanwhile, another female patient with low oxygen passed away after she was brought to the GTP hospital. While the doctor tried to save her by giving her CPR, patients could be seen lying outside the emergency ward with people pleading hospital staff to provide their loved ones with oxygen masks. India's healthcare system is under severe stress.
Il sistema sanitario indiano è nettamente in difficoltà e questi sono i livelli critici che la situazione ha raggiunto in India.
I'm a health worker, but if someone dies in my family, I won't even be able to say final goodbyes.
The Lord has spoken to me again right now.
Il Signore ha parlato con me e mi ha portato in India e il Signore mi ha portato. Ho visto tanta angoscia lì. Ho visto la mancanza di strumenti in ospedale e tantissime persone che riempiono gli ospedali.
NDTV 24/7.
We probably, you see, we as a doctor, we as a